Hello and welcome to The Download from Wise Woman and Wordsmith, where insight meets inspiration. A space for creatives, dreamers and visionaries ready to spark new ideas, ignite purpose and reimagine possibilities. Here we share downloads of wisdom, stories and strategies to help you thrive in your creative journey. I'm your host, Jill Marshall. Tune in, connect and let the magic unfold.
Show you tomorrow.
Welcome back to The Download from Wise Woman and Wordsmith, the podcast where we explore creativity, intuition, and the profound messages that life delivers when we're paying attention. I'm Jill Marshall, and today we're talking about something fascinating, those people who seem to circle back into our lives. Have you ever noticed that certain types of people keep reappearing in different forms? Maybe it's an old friend, a mentor, or even a nemesis, or maybe it's someone who represents a lesson or a pattern. Why does this happen? And what can we learn from it? Today we'll explore old friends popping up in unusual circumstances, archetypes that resurface, and the lessons they all bring, basically the downloads that come in the form of people. So, why do people reappear in our lives? Obviously, sometimes it's just because they're in our lives, they're family, old friends, workmates, fellow students, former partners, and sometimes they just show up because there's a reunion, a celebration, or even a tragedy, or because some person in the middle has facilitated it somehow. Then there are those beautiful moments where someone from your past shows up out of the blue. These are the moments that feel like magic, as if you're being given a little hint from powers that you can't see about which way to go. I had a taste of this a few years ago at a curious moment in our time as, well, Earth dwellers. As often happens, the journey to the final aha spans several years, and it's not until you look back afterwards that you realise the significance of it. So about a decade ago, I owned a big house divided into flats. My family lived in one, and we rented out the others. There was magic in that building. We made many friends and had wonderful times with the tenants and the holidaymakers who came and went, and each of them holds a special place in our memories. One of our most memorable tenants was Jeremy. He'd come from New York, where he was principal cello with the New York Met, on a year's secondment to the Auckland Philharmonic Orchestra. A lovely guy, he bought himself a camper van to see the country between performances, or he'd stride off to the bus with this cello strapped to his back like an enormous and much-cherished baby. Because of Jeremy, my daughter was introduced to classical music at a young age, and we had excellent experiences of seeing the APO in action in cathedrals and theatres, but no performance ever compared with standing on our balcony among the palmy treetops as eddies of gorgeous music drifted up from the garden flat, so deep and melodic that it hummed in our hearts. Eventually, Jeremy headed back to the States. He wanted to create film scores at some point in his future, and whether he did or not, it was evident even then that he would be going places, creating music and laughter and that cruisy sense of ease wherever he went. So, fast forward, now I'm on a plane, flying from Auckland to Manchester for Christmas 2019. I can't get the screen in the back of the seat in front to work properly, so I give up on the big action movie I'm trying to watch. Instead, I filter around through the menu and stumble on an indie film I've never heard of. It features Martin Freeman as the romantic lead, all good as I like Martin Freeman, and the plotline sounds quirky and interesting. And it's a great film in the end. The screen is still playing up, so I have to watch it in 20-minute bursts, which is not the greatest way to follow a storyline. I like the film so much, however, that I decide to try again, and this time get a slightly less lumpy experience, which allows me to appreciate the film even more, including the very funny piece where Bernadette from Big Bang is singing along with her cello to a very, very uncomfortable audience. For some reason, despite all this stopping and starting, I stay glued to the credits at the end. And very soon after the main cast list, the line, "Musical score by," pops up. And there's his name, Jeremy Turner. He'd done it. A composer, artist, score creator. And of course, it made sense. Bernadette from Big Bang had played cello, just like Jeremy himself. I was so ridiculously excited by this that I woke my daughter up to tell her. And then when we landed in Hong Kong to transit, I emailed Jeremy, who I'd not spoken to in years, to tell him what I'd just seen. It's magical to me that he's living his dream and that his dream is uplifting other art forms now. What a glorious collaboration. What's even more magical when I look back, however, is that stopover in Hong Kong in December 2019. We made the same stop off on the return journey in mid-January 2020. And I swear there wasn't a mask to be seen or any sign of coronavirus whatsoever. One sole staff member waved a temperature scanner near us, smiling the whole time, nothing to worry about at all. It all, for me, takes on a slightly eerie, otherworldly quality in my mind now, as we can picture just how horribly different life was to become, just weeks or maybe even days later. Now, I don't think Jeremy's reappearance foretold a pandemic, but I do think that magical moments like this can remind us to find happiness, even in dark times. That lovely film starring Martin Freeman, along with the now rather huge names of Morena Baccarin and Jake Lacey, it's called Ode to Joy. Yep, just saying. But that's an example of when we know or have known the person well and have a personal connection to them. What about when it's a type of person, almost a character, that shows up repeatedly in our personal and or professional lives? These may well be archetypes. And at the risk of sounding a bit woo-woo, I encourage you to think of this as steps on a Jungian journey into the shadow and truly knowing ourselves. Some believe archetypes indicate the universe or our subconscious inviting us to resolve unfinished business. Others see it as a signal of our own growth, a reflection of the energy we are attracting or repelling at any given time. But whether you view it through a spiritual lens, a psychological one, or simply as the rhythm of human connection, these recurring figures are worth paying attention to. So who does keep coming back as a recurring archetype? Let's take a look at some of the archetypes that tend to reappear in our life. Firstly, the wise mentor. This might be an old teacher, a former boss, or even a casual acquaintance who always seems to appear when you're on the cusp of something big. They're here to guide you, often bringing wisdom that confirms what you already know deep down, but haven't acted on yet. More about my own example of this in a moment. Secondly, the trickster. This person arrives with promises of big ideas, fast success, or an easy way forward. They might be charming, but they can also lead you astray if you don't stay grounded. If you find yourself meeting tricksters again and again, ask yourself, what lessons have I yet to learn about discernment? The trickster isn't always a person, it can be a situation or an environment that you're in, but it's good to learn to recognise the flavour of trickster in your life. Thirdly, the challenger. This could be a colleague, a competitor, even a difficult family member. They push your buttons, they challenge your values and force you to stand your ground. When a challenger circles back, it often means it's time to reclaim your power in some area of your life. More about this in a moment, too. Fourthly, the kindred spirit. These are the people who feel like home the moment you meet them. They might come in and out of your life, but each time they do, they bring comfort, inspiration, or a timely reminder of who you really are. And finally, the shadow figure. This is the person who embodies an aspect of yourself that you struggle with. Maybe they're overly ambitious when you hesitate to go after what you want. Maybe they're emotionally distant when you're craving connection. They hold up a mirror, forcing you to confront something within yourself. So downloads in the form of people represent a particular kind of both-and approach, both the gift and the challenge. They can act like sudden insights or creative bursts. They arrive to shake things up, to clarify, to confirm, but this can be both a blessing and a challenge. On the positive side, the right person at the right time can feel like divine intervention. A mentor appears when you're on the verge of quitting, a friend resurfaces when you need support, or a collaborator steps in just when you're ready to take your work to the next level. These people are catalysts for growth and transformation. I noticed some years ago that I had a particular archetype turn up very regularly in my life. Jung, Einstein, so many people far wiser than me have noted how we create our own realities. And this was the first evidence I really saw for myself that we can and do create people in roles in our life, almost like the cast of a play or a film. When I noticed this role, I noticed others too. And it was a very strong reminder of the fact that we may move on, out or up, but until we deal with what our unconscious is telling us, the situation around us will remain the same. Different place, same circumstances. So what do I mean by this? Well, this particular archetype relates to that wise mentor category. I noticed that from very early on in my working life, even from my Saturday job as a teenager, I often had an older, wise woman circling in the job orbit. They were often strong women that slightly scared other people, but who were deeply, incredibly kind and compassionate, and I adored them. They were often sarcastic and a bit snappy, but I found them hilarious and uplifting. They even looked the same, older than me by 10 to 30 years, vigorous and busy, with short blonde, silver or white hair. And they always helped me get on in my job or in my career. All sorts of jobs and career, right across the spectrum. It became such a pattern that when I changed jobs or career, which, let's face it, I do fairly frequently, I would see someone peripherally in the new environment who looked and sounded and acted like this and think, there you are. And I'd know that we would get on well and that something would evolve around them. It wasn't until more recently, in recent years, that I considered why this person kept showing up. I'd started studying Carl Jung by then, and I recognized that these very real people represented an archetype in my life. What were they telling me? When I considered the qualities that they all demonstrated, albeit in different idiosyncratic ways, I understood what they represented. Wisdom, maturity, a kind of take me or leave me attitude, an ability to get things done and to help others do it more effectively too. These were the qualities that I needed to integrate into myself on my own individuation journey. Now, this did not happen overnight. I needed to overcome all types of people-pleasing codependencies and other shadow qualities first. But I think I got there. I will slip back and I'll know I have if this archetype appears again. But I don't think it's a coincidence that she hasn't appeared in my life since I announced to the world that I'm doing this as wise woman and wordsmith. Since I admitted that I am fairly sassy and sort of wise and actually now pretty old. Again, just saying. But what about the negative do-overs in archetypes? Not all downloads come wrapped in light. Some people return as a test, challenging you to break a cycle or to finally say no. An ex-partner, a difficult client, or an unreliable business associate. These figures can reappear as a final exam of sorts to see if you really learned your lesson. It might even be why you dream of taking your final exams again, which is a very common dream theme. Who's shown up to set a test for you? It's worth considering when you recognize them, of course. My own example of this archetypal pattern has literally just shown up for me in the course of doing this podcast. 2 episodes ago, I talked about the silencing of women and how it had happened to me on many occasions, as for many other women and men who were perhaps less alpha apex male. I detailed 4 instances of when I'd found myself silenced and made some comments on the wider context of International Women's Day. It was only when I thought about it after publishing the episode that I realised something critical. In every one of my 4 instances, there were 2 men involved. They weren't always a unit. Some of them appeared together, and others operated together to deliver a certain outcome, one that for me generally led to my voice being diminished and life, admittedly in varying degrees, taking a turn for the worse, not just for me, but often for others too. Others for whom I tried to achieve something or advocate for something. And suddenly, just 2 weeks ago, I saw the trickster pattern. This is some weird archetype pointing to a certain set of circumstances. You're about to be silenced. Your life and possibly others may be about to get a bit or even a lot worse. And when this happens, you can choose to stay silenced or you can fight. You can choose to go back and make your voice louder, more insistent. You can advocate for more, not less. Now that I've seen this pattern, this archetype, and noticed its trickster odour, then I will know it and deal with it if I see it or even smell it again. And if it doesn't show up again, this strange Gemini pairing of men with the potential for power, then I'll know that I finally, perhaps belatedly, learnt that lesson and know how to deal with it. So, my closing thoughts. The next time someone circles back into your life, pause. Ask yourself, what is this person here to teach me? What am I being invited to revisit, reclaim, or release? Not all returning figures need to stay, but all have something to reveal. That's it for today's episode of The Download from Wise Woman and Wordsmith. If this resonated with you, I'd love to hear about the recurring archetypes in your life. Share your stories, reflections, or questions via my podcast website. And as always, keep downloading the wisdom the universe is sending your way. Until next time, stay open, stay curious, and stay connected. Thanks for tuning in to the Download podcast. Feel free to like, comment and share and all of that good stuff. And for more about my books, coaching or business services, please check out wisewomanandwordsmith.com.